Well, good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much indeed for coming along to my talk, Digging Deep, or Adventures and Misadventures in the Sahara Desert. So first things first, how do you get there? I'm often asked that. Well, you drive down France, down Spain, across the Straits of Gibraltar to a lovely town called Tangier. You take the Atlantic road south, past Marrakesh, that's on your left, up over the Atlas Mountains, drop down the other side, and you're in the Sahara Desert. The other thing about the desert is people often think that when you talk about the desert, it's just sand dunes from horizon to horizon. Obviously, there is that kind of terrain in the Sahara, but as you can see from this picture, it's actually more diverse and different than people actually realize. So this is obviously a dried up lake bed. There are mountains and rocky terrain, all kinds of other different terrain there over and above the pure sand. Now, a question for you. Does anybody know what that is? What's in that white box? Anybody know? Shelter. Shelter close. Shelter at what time of the day? No, the opposite. Yeah, anybody? You're all quite warm. Correct. That's your living quarters. So you sleep on the roof of the Land Rover, yeah? This pops up into a tent. And there's a nice, comfy, thick mattress up there. You wouldn't believe how comfy it is compared to a normal tent. So the whole vehicle is, and this is Lorraine, by the way, who's sitting at the back here. So as you see, Lorraine has set up camp. So the whole vehicle is completely self-sufficient. You can obviously see the awning here. There's a water tank in there. There's a fridge with a few beers in it. There's a cooker, literally the kitchen sink. Everything is in there in the Land Rover. And here we are parked up in an oasis. And an oasis, when you're crossing in the desert, it is a little bit like in the movies. You know, you drive along and you see this sort of little smudgy green thing on the horizon. And you get closer and closer and you start to see the trees and you realize it is actually an oasis. It is actually quite like that in real life. And you come up closer to it and you can see all of the palm trees here. And this was quite a big oasis and there was a little community had kind of built up around it. Now, as I said earlier, again, people have misconceptions about the Sahara and they think it's all just about sand. So this is a little market in a neighbouring town. Everything you see in that photograph was grown and produced within the Sahara Desert. So there was water and there's fertility and there's production within what many people assume is a very, very arid area. So a very basic little town, basic market, everything just spread out on the floor. But all of this is very much in the spirit of food miles. That's all produced locally within the desert. So that's touring in the desert. We go back again and we competed in a competitive rally in the desert, the Tuareg Rally. So if you can see there, you probably can't see it too clearly, but you can see Lorraine and I wearing crash helmets. You can see the car getting a bit of air there over a jump. All the living stuff is gone, so the tent's gone, the fridge is gone, the kitchen sink's gone, all that stuff's taken out, beefed it up a little bit, and we've now turned it into a competitive vehicle. Very tough event. You will travel probably up to 250 kilometers a day, every day for 7 continuous days. So it's a very tough event for both the navigator and the driver. So the navigator, again, Lorraine, she's a very good sense of direction, even in the desert. So the navigator gets given a little road book, which is partly diagrammatic, partly descriptive, that tells you where to go. So drive along the valley for 3 kilometers, look for the dried up riverbed on the left, go down there for 2 kilometers, and you follow the whole route against the clock, and very enjoyable, but it's a pretty demanding event as well. So I've been saying there's not all sand in the desert, but obviously there is quite a lot of sand. So here we are in the sand. We didn't tip over there, and every time I look at that photograph, I look at Lorraine's head angle, and I think, was that the vital little bit of weight that kept us upright? We did stay on all 4 wheels in that, although it was pretty marginal. So sometimes you have to dig deep in a very, very literal sense in the Sahara Desert. So here we are, stuck obviously, and I'm out with a shovel digging us out. Once you've dug yourself out, if you see these little things in this other photograph, these are called sand ladders. So you stick these in under the wheels, you pack it all up, and with a bit of luck, you get yourself out. It's obviously a very sweaty, tough, difficult thing to do in the heat. It can be very frustrating as well. You can spend 15, 20 minutes digging yourself out. You go 30 meters and you're stuck again. Shovels out, sand ladders out again. All of this is, of course, against the clock. So occasionally you get punctures as well, not from nails or anything like that, but in the desert you run very, very low tire pressure, so you let the tires right down. They actually look like you're driving in 4 flats, in fact, to get more grip in the sand. But what happens is sometimes the tire then comes off the rim. So that's what's happened here. Now, if you're mechanically minded, you'll realize that a conventional jack obviously doesn't work very well in the desert, yeah? You're winding it, it's just sinking into the sand. So you need one of these devices, like a giant space hopper. You stick it in underneath the car. This pipe goes round to the exhaust. So again, it's a team effort. One of you rams this onto the back of the exhaust of the car. The other reaches in with a hand, revs up the engine. The exhaust gases go down this pipe, blow this up, and it lifts your vehicle up off the sand and a very safe and secure platform to change the wheel. I could actually do with a sip of water if somebody is kind enough. Oops. So, one morning then on the rally, the day after that photograph was taken, in fact, we set off, and very early into the stage, we broke down. Terminal gearbox failure, that's it, we're stuck. We're going nowhere. So, for a few minutes, it was still quite noisy, lots of people around. It's a little bit the wacky races, all these Land Rovers and pickups and everybody on all sides, they're all going past you. But they all disappear up and over the sand dunes. They disappear over the horizon. And the one thing that I remember most from that experience was the silence. I don't know whether any of you have ever experienced the intensity of that silence. I remember walking up a sand dune and it stood there. It wasn't at all windy. It can be quite windy in the desert, but there was absolutely no wind at all. And I remember standing there, breathing, and I could literally hear my own breath. It was the only thing I could hear. So back down to the Land Rover, and on the front of it we have an emergency beacon. This is provided by the organisers. It sends a signal, you hope, via satellite, gives them the signal, gives your location in the desert, and somebody will come out and get you. So we went down to the emergency beacon, it says press 3 seconds, so pressed it probably for 5 or 6 just to make sure. And then you just sit and look at it. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't beep back at you, it doesn't change colour, doesn't say it's sent a signal, definitely doesn't say a signal's been received. So you look at each other, has it worked? No idea. So you just wait, and you just sit there, and you wait. I can't say we were concerned at this stage. We had food and water on board. We weren't in any real danger at this time, and the rally organisers know roughly the route you're taking, so if we disappeared, didn't turn up, somebody was going to come and find us. So we sat in silence, waiting and waiting. You hear anything? Thought I heard something. Was that an engine? Sure enough, we heard an engine, and a great big 6-wheel drive truck appears, rumbles up to us to rescue us, so the safety beacon had worked. So he hitches up to us and pulls us out of the hole that we were in and sets off to tow us out through the rest of the stage. Now, I have done a fair few things around the world, motorsport and other things, but this was one of the most dangerous and demanding and difficult days of my life, without a doubt. Being towed on a rope is quite difficult anyway, even if somebody tows you across the car park, because there's a double jeopardy. Either you run into the car in front of you, or you let the rope go slack, the person pulls away, it twangs, and you break the rope. So you have to concentrate quite hard, braking and keeping your pace exactly the same as the vehicle in front. They'll be turning corners. You've got to make sure you don't get the rope tangled up. So it's constant concentration. But the most irksome feature of all of that journey was the dust. Okay, you've got a massive 6-wheel truck in front of you going through all kinds of dusty terrain, chucking this cloud of dust at you. At times it was so bad I couldn't even see the truck. Very, very dangerous. If he stopped, you were going to run right into the back of him. So Lorraine took a short iPhone video of the journey, and I was going to show you a little excerpt of it. But as I mentioned earlier, lots of different terrain in the desert. You've got dried up lake beds, salt beds, or salt lakes rather, sand dunes, all kinds of different terrain. In the video, it's actually one of the easier parts. It's quite flat, it's quite straight, the dust isn't too bad. So bear in mind when you watch the video, most of the journey was actually more difficult than this. Good to go on sound? Good to go. Gives you an idea of the dust there. So there you go. So the little sting in the tail of that story is that the rescue truck picked us up at about 12 noon. They eventually delivered us to the service park at 8 p.m. Wow. We spent 8 hours on the end of that rope. What made it even worse was we're heading in a westerly direction, yeah? So the sun is setting, yeah? So as the evening progresses, the sun now set. You now get the sun in your eyes mixed with the dust. So the visibility progressively got worse and worse. So the title of my talk is Digging Deep, and I tell you that's what we had to do. Our reserves of resilience and stamina and endurance and determination to see it through. At about 5 or 6 hours in, we passed through this village, and there were some little kind of tent things going on. I think maybe they were for people that do camel treks and things in the desert, and they could overnight in these little tents. And I said to Lorraine, look, I'm shattered. I can't go on. We're going to have to stop here, and we're going to have to overnight here. Lorraine didn't fancy it. So that idea didn't go, and we had to carry on. And the other aspect of it is, of course, you're completely out of control. Even though you're in a Land Rover, you've got the 6-wheel drive monster truck in front of you. He's driving exactly where he wants to drive. He's stopping when he wants to stop. He's turning when he wants to stop. He's going at the speed he wants to stop. You're almost completely out of control. There was no radio, so we couldn't actually communicate with him. But at 8 p.m., finally, we got back to the service park and climbed out of the Land Rover, absolutely filthy from head to toe in dust. Red eyes, shattered, absolutely exhausted. But we made it. So, live to tell the tale. So, many of you, maybe most of you thinking, my goodness, I couldn't have sat in Lorraine's seat. I couldn't have actually gone through that. But, I don't think you should be too quick to underestimate the kind of depth of and reserves of resilience that you actually have. Because don't forget, there was no option. Yeah, we couldn't just stop in the desert. We had to take this tow. There was no option. So as I say, don't underestimate the reserves of strength that you may have. If you are facing a very difficult challenge like that, you can also dig deep. Thank you. Thank you.